Discover the latest health tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories. This is the Health Channel Podcast. Your journey to better health starts now.
Every day, our immune system fights for us, often without us even knowing about it or feeling it. But what happens when our defenses are down and compromised and viruses become a real threat? From RSV to COVID-19 to the influenza virus to the shingles virus and even the Epstein-Barr virus. While most of these viruses can cause mostly mild symptoms that'll go away, some of them can be really complicated in certain individuals. Today, we're going to focus on preventing these viruses, strengthening your immune system so you can fight them adequately, and ways to stop viruses from spreading in general. All that and more on this episode of Ask the Doc. No appointment needed. Welcome to Ask the Doc, the show where we encourage you, our viewers, to send us your healthcare-related questions. My name is Dr. Kamaljit Kaur, and I'm a double board-certified primary care physician. Let's get right into our questions today. This first one comes to us from Artie, and Artie has reached out through our website, allhealthtv.com. Artie's question is, Hi, Dr. Kaur. I'm something of a skeptic, so I'm having a tough time believing that stress or lack of sleep can really make you more susceptible to viruses like RSV or shingles. Am I right or what? Hi, Artie. Thank you so much for sending in this question. And it's a very important one because oftentimes we think about medications and vaccines and other objective treatments that can be done to help prevent viral infections. But a lot of times we forget about the basics like sleep and stress management. So this is something very important, and I'm glad we're going to talk about it. I think the best way for me to help you understand why stress management and adequate restful sleep are so important in fighting infections is to highlight what they actually do to help keep our bodies healthy. Let's start with stress. You might have heard me talk about it in the past, but it's worth repeating because chronic mental stress and angst can actually have a truly detrimental effect on our body and especially on our immune system's ability to be the strong army that we depend on it to be, and that's needed to repair unhealthy tissues and fight off intruders like viruses. For instance, our immune system comprises of a variety of cells that I'm going to call soldier cells, and these cells help us stay healthy by fighting off intruders like viruses and bacteria. One group of these cells, these soldier cells, is called the T cells. Now, these directly fight and kill viruses for us, and they also fight and kill the cells that are infected with the viruses in our body. They also help coordinate an overall fighting response in our immune system that helps us do what we need to do to help ward off these infections, and if we get them, to help resolve them quite quickly. So as you can see, T cells in particular are very important for our immune response. Now, chronic stress, no matter what the cause is, it could be your job, it could be your personal life, it could be maybe even something that is minor but still is causing you a little bit of stress, but just for a long time, that can actually damage and impair the ability of those T cells, those soldier cells, to be able to fight these infections as they normally would. And that's how we become susceptible to getting sick when we're under stress. There's a lot more that goes into it, but this is one point that I really wanted to highlight. Additionally, chronic stress leads to a release of a variety of what we call pro-inflammatory proteins in the body. And as we all know, in an inflammatory environment and inflammation in the body is really damaging not only to our healthy tissues, but it also makes us more susceptible to disease. You mentioned sleep, so I'd also like to touch on that as well. Similar to chronic stress, not getting enough sleep can wreak as much, if not more, havoc on our internal systems. When you are getting adequate, restful sleep, and I'll talk about what that looks like in just a minute, your body is actually working hard to repair and strengthen itself. So you might think, hey, I'm sleeping, but there's so many things that are going on in the body that are making you healthy and ready for the next day, but also repairing damage that might have been done in the day prior or the days prior. Now, what is healthy sleep? Healthy sleep, obviously, there has a time associated with it. So for most healthy adults, 7 to 9 hours of sleep. But then quality of sleep is really important too. So you want to make sure that you're getting restful sleep. You're not waking up throughout the night often. You're not gasping for air or choking during sleep, having apnea symptoms. And that if you happen to wake up during the night for whatever reason, maybe your dog or your cat woke you up because they jumped in the bed, that you're able to quickly fall back asleep and get back to that restful quality sleep that you should be getting. So during sleep, of all the mechanisms that happen in our body to repair, one of the important ones is cortisol regulation. I know a lot of you may have heard of cortisol, especially in social media. High cortisol comes with high stress, not getting enough sleep, and certain disease processes. And when you have high cortisol, that really creates an inflammatory environment in the body. And then that's just not good for any of our tissues to stay healthy. Also, when you have high levels of cortisol, those soldier cells that should be optimized and ready to fight are actually limited and they're weakened. So they're not able to fight as strongly as they normally would be. So if you're not getting enough sleep, then some of those cells, now earlier I had talked about T cells. There's also other soldier cells known as natural killer cells and lymphocytes that can also be limited. This is important because those cells are necessary not just to fight the infection, but to recognize it. So in order for any problem to get fixed, the first step is to acknowledge or recognize the problem, right? So similarly, in your body, if you have an infection or something is off, the first step that your internal mechanisms need in order to move forward and heal that process is to recognize that something is even wrong. And that usually involves a complicated cascade of recognizing an intruder like a virus because of the type of membrane that's on its outside or the type of proteins that it can excrete sometimes. So a little complicated, but point is that early recognition is very important and it's done by those natural killer cells and your lymphocytes. When you're not getting enough sleep or you're chronically stressed, then those are limited. They can't do their job. So sometimes your body doesn't even realize that I have an intruder or there's something going on in order for me to even get up and start fighting it. So that's very important. The other thing that these cells do is once they recognize that something is wrong or there's a virus or bacteria or intruder in the body, they coordinate a whole immune response. So you can think of it like an army, right? The forefront person sees that there's something wrong, and then they go back to the troops. They organize a response. You're going to go here. You're going to go here. We're going to attack from this side. And all that is very important to get rid of the intruder or the virus. So all of these soldier cells are very, very important in doing that. One more thing that I'd like to highlight about chronic stress, because I can't talk enough about how bad chronic stress is. One thing is that it does increase the risk of, it increases the risk of reactivation of dormant viruses. So let me see how I can put this. When you have certain viruses in your body's immune system can attack and can fight them and it heals them and the viruses are killed and you don't have them anymore. There are, however, certain viruses like the herpes virus and the chickenpox virus that can stay in your body and they just kind of stay asleep until something triggers them to reactivate or to, come back into play again, unfortunately. And chronic stress actually increases the risk of that happening because the mechanisms that are needed in order to keep them at bay are limited. So you might be more prone to getting a herpes outbreak or to getting a shingles outbreak if you're an adult, which is the reactivation of that chickenpox virus. This is very, very important to realize because I know a lot of people have heard about the shingles vaccine and the shingles infection, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the program, but I think it's important to note that as well. Also, if you're chronically stressed, then not only are you at higher risk of reactivating or waking up these viruses that are sleeping, but you're also at higher risk of getting the complications that come from the disease process of these viruses. Lastly, I want to make note of the fact that adequate, restful, good quality sleep is important for what's called immune memory. So when your immune system is confronted with an intruder like a virus or a bacteria, it goes ahead and mounts that immune response. The soldiers get together and they do what they need to do. But then they also remember, who that intruder was so that the next time they're confronted with the intruder or the virus, they know exactly how to deal with it so they can heal the body and return it to its healthy state. When you're chronically stressed, even that mechanism is not that it's deactivated, but it's really limited. And so your body doesn't recognize that, oh, we had this infection last year. We should know how to treat it. Instead, it kind of starts treating it from scratch. And then that can actually cause more symptoms and more discomfort. And that can lead to complications as well. This is also important for vaccines. Now, when you get a vaccine, the whole point is for the vaccine to strengthen your body's response to that particular virus or organism so that if it comes up in the future, your body knows how to fight it. When you have chronic stress or inadequate sleep, remember those memory systems are diminished. So the vaccine is not going to work as adequately in your body as it would for somebody who gets enough sleep and isn't stressed all the time. So that's something that's really important to know. And I think, that's not known by many people. So a lot of times people will get a vaccine and say, well, it didn't really work for me, or I don't think this is, it optimized in my body. And there's a whole host of reasons that can happen. But that's one of them that we don't talk about enough, is that if you're chronically stressed or if you're not getting enough sleep, then your immune memory is also diminished. All right. So as you can see, there's a lot of reasons that things like this can happen, and things like not getting enough sleep and being chronically stressed can lead to a diminished immune response. And I hope that helped answer your question. And I also hope that you are now motivated to talk about or implement some stress management and try to get some better sleep on a regular basis. All right, let's get to our next question. And this one comes to us from Odette. And Odette has reached out to us from Instagram asking, "Hi, Dr. Kaur. What's new in the RSV and flu prevention for this season? I'm sure you're going to say vaccines, but what about some of these home remedies that I've been hearing about?" Hi, Odette. Thank you for sending in your question. And I am a big proponent for vaccines when necessary and safely administered. Also, washing your hands and other preventative measures that you can take at home are really, really important. Though I'm not too sure about the exact home remedies that you're referring to, but if you have any concerns, as I always say, talk to your doctor about them. Now, as a physician and a scientist, I do confidently recommend a variety of vaccines to my patients, again, when it's appropriate and when they're safe. And as you alluded to, in addition to vaccines, there are other things that we can do to keep our immune system healthy and strong. And I'll go through them in just a minute. But since you asked specifically about the influenza and RSV vaccines, I want to highlight that, yes, we are in the time of year, and sometimes certain times of year more than other, that these infections do tend to peak. Therefore, being adequately vaccinated or protected against them is really important. Let's talk a little bit about how we can do this with some immune system 411. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the fact that vaccines are developed using a harmless piece of a virus, and this is done to ultimately create a virus buster or to modulate and enhance the immune response towards that virus. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's important that your body, once you get a vaccine, recognizes that, hey, this is something that I need to learn to fight against. So in the future, if I come across this virus, my host or my person doesn't get sick and we can stay healthy. Another fact that's very, very important is, did you know that 70% of your immune system cells live in your digestive tract? This is something that's come to light in the medical data and in medical studies over the last 10 to 15 years, and it's really, really exciting. Now, this is very important, and there's a lot of mechanisms, and it's very complex. But essentially, your immune system cells, the ones that are in your gut, live in what's called the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, or GALT. Now, I know nobody's really going to, think about, hey, what do I do to strengthen my GALT? But you can say, what can I do to strengthen my gut? And, part of the reason that a lot of our immune system lives in our gut, because I know the fact itself is probably shocking to a lot of people. But then the next question is, well, what does our gut have to do with our immunity? Why does so much of our immune system live in our gut? Since our gut is chronically exposed to trillions of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other organisms, It's important that it be strong, and it does that by a variety of immune system regulated mechanisms that help keep the good organisms and the bad organisms in their respective places, hopefully the bad organisms out of the body altogether. And it keeps our gut and our whole body very, very healthy. Another thing to consider is that citrus fruits, leafy greens, garlic, and fermented foods like yogurt or kimchi or sauerkraut are all important for a healthy immune system. I'll break it down just a little bit. When it comes to fermented foods, these are beneficial for gut immunity primarily because they increase the amount of gut microbiome and microbiodata that we have down there. So what does that mean? Your gut is lined with a whole bunch of organisms, as I just mentioned. So bacteria, fungi, viruses, you name it, we got a bunch of them in there. And it's actually a good thing. Don't get scared. It's a good thing to have all of these in there because they do their own job. Some of them can give us good nutrients. Some of them help fight off the bad guys. And some of them help with our immune system responses. So it's good to have them. The other thing about fermented foods is that they give us some good probiotics. And probiotics are kind of like food for those good bacteria to stay strong and healthy and do what they need to do to keep us healthy. And also, when it comes to fermented foods, they actually help us stay in an anti-inflammatory environment. They help with the inflammatory regulation in our body. And as we know, that's also very, very important. What about leafy green veggies? We talk about it all the time. I know you've probably heard it from your doctors. Eat your veggies and 5 servings of veggies and this, that, and whatever. But it's true. It's for a reason. When it comes to leafy green veggies, they offer us dietary fiber, which fiber is amazing. It does so many good things in the body from helping us stay healthy overall, regulating our insulin, our glucose, preventing diabetes, keeping our weight down, and in some cases, even helping prevent cancer. So fiber is very important, and we can get it from leafy green veggies. Also, these leafy green veggies give us what are called phytochemicals, and these are good also for disease prevention and keeping the body in an anti-inflammatory state. And vitamins, micro and macronutrients also come from leafy green veggies. Of course, different ones have different concentrations of them, but overall as a group, they're very, very good for these micronutrients. And then minerals as well. So, all of that good stuff that sometimes we think we should take a multivitamin for, they actually, it's nature's multivitamin is fruits and vegetables, and especially leafy green veggies. What about garlic? I mentioned garlic, but a lot of people probably don't think about garlic when it comes to, hey, what can I do to be healthy? Well, did you know that garlic helps modulate your immune system responses also? And it really does provide anti-inflammatory effects and keeps that inflammation down. And it also gives us some good antioxidants. So all of that together really, really helps. Let's talk about fever. Now, I know that most people may see fever as a bad sign, but fever is actually a sign that your immune system is working and fighting a virus. So when you have a virus come in, or sometimes even when you get a vaccine, whenever there's some type of intruder or antigen, as we like to call it, your body recognizes that as something not right, and we need to fight this. And part of that fight includes fever. High fever, really high fever, like 103, 105, that's not always a good sign. But if you have a fever that is 100.4 or maybe even up to 101 sometimes, that is a natural response of your healthy immune system doing what it needs to do to fight that infection, no matter what kind of infection it is, honestly. With fever, the one thing that, again, I want to highlight is if it's a really high fever or if it's a fever that doesn't go away with Tylenol or ibuprofen or something like that that's over the counter, then you really want to seek the attention of your physician to see, hey, maybe there's something else going on that I might need additional treatment for. The other point that's important to know is that exposure to a virus trains your immune system for long-term protection. So I know I mentioned it a little bit earlier, that immune system memory, which is really important because you may get sick from a virus at one point. So you might get the flu virus, you might get the COVID virus, or you might get the RSV virus, but you want your immune system to develop a response not only to fight it, but then to remember that, hey, we had this infection, last month, last year. We need to mount those same responses in order to get rid of it and keep our body healthy. So it's very important to know that that immune system memory is really, really important. Let's get to our next question. And this one comes to us from Narendra, and he's reaching out from YouTube asking, "Greetings, Dr. Kaur. My physician keeps extolling the virtues of a healthy digestive tract or gut. Can you please explain why gut health is important in helping prevent recurring viral infections? Well, this is a wonderful question. I know we touched a little bit about it and gut health, but I'm so happy to be able to go back into a little bit more detail on it. Now, as we highlighted earlier, a significant portion of your immune system lies within your gut. And there's a plethora of mechanisms that occur in your gut to keep the rest of your body healthy and keep it strong. One of the most important jobs of this part of your immune system is ensure that all those fighting soldiers that we referred to earlier are optimized so they can recognize intruders like viruses and eliminate them adequately. It's amazing how much scientific data has come out in the last 10 to 15 years that supports this. And I'm so glad that your doctor's talking to you about it too. And you know what? The other thing that I want everybody to understand when it comes to our gut and our digestive tract is, of course, the immune system in it is very, very important. And it's important to keep it happy. But there's also other things that happen in the gut that sometimes we don't realize are important. And maybe we think they're not related to immune health. For instance, glucose and insulin balance. Sometimes some parts of it are regulated in the gut. And it's important to have a good baseline gut health in order for all that other stuff to keep happening the way it should be happening. All right, let's get to our next question. This one comes to us from Everett, and Everett emailed us through questions@allhealthtv.com. All right, let's see what Everett is asking. Hi, Dr. Kaur. Our toddler gets rashes all the time, and we've become so used to them that we've stopped rushing her to the doctor every time we see one. However, that said, what are the telltale signs that a rash might be viral as opposed to allergic? Hi, Everett. I'm grateful that you reached out and thank you for sending us this question. Also, I'm so sorry that your toddler is going through this. I hope I can provide you some insight and we can get her on the way to being healthier and maybe not having these rashes come back so often. Now, while either one of them, viral rashes or allergic rashes, can be mild and self-resolving most of the time, either one of them can also progress to something way more complicated. So we want to make sure, I'm glad you're being vigilant to figure out, how do I tell the difference? Let's start talking about the causes. So viral rashes are caused, you guessed it, by a viral infection. The infection itself and the immune system response that it incites can lead to a rash. Allergic rashes, on the other hand, are caused by an allergic reaction, usually to a food, medication, or it could even be lotion or even laundry detergent. Their appearances can differ too. So viral rashes are usually what we call maculopapular, which means that it can be flat on the skin, but have a red appearance, not too red, but a little red, and it could have some bumps along it as well. Whereas allergic rashes tend to be a little bit more red. They usually are like hive-like. If you've seen a hive, it's usually a circular lesion, and there can be several of them along a certain body part. And they tend to be very itchy. Viral rashes aren't usually itchy. There's also some associated features that help us differentiate between the two. So viral rashes are usually associated with like cold or fever or fatigue, and usually start a couple days to a week or two after that initial viral infection started. And allergic reactions, on the other hand, these are generally not associated with a fever or upper respiratory symptoms or fatigue. They're usually very itchy. They can develop quite rapidly after exposure to the trigger thing. So for instance, if you used a new lotion or took a medication, a viral rash will develop or can develop quite quickly afterwards. It can be up to a day, but still sooner than a viral rash would have developed. Lastly, I want to highlight the differences in how these are treated, because that's important too. With viral rashes, they tend to resolve on their own after the infection heals. They can take a little bit longer than, the upper respiratory symptoms, but they tend to be pretty benign, pretty harmless, and they go away on their own. And usually it's just supportive care. So making sure you're hydrated. If anything is causing you fatigue or body aches, maybe taking some acetaminophen for it or some analgesics, and making sure that you're eating healthy while you're sick. Allergic rashes, on the other hand, usually respond well to topical antihistamines or corticosteroids, or just staying really nice and hydrated. So there are big differences between them, but there's some similarities as well. So it's important to really know which one you're dealing with. I do want to emphasize, though, that as a rash, it can be mild, either of them, But the fact that your toddler's rash keeps coming back, I'm a little concerned. So I do encourage you to see a dermatologist or have her see a dermatologist so they can really figure out what's going on and get her treated and healthy. Well, that's all we have for today, folks. These were some wonderful questions. I hope I gave you some really good information. And here's to everyone staying strong, healthy, and happy. I'll see you here next time. Again, my name is Dr. Kamaljit Kaur, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Health Channel podcast. We hope this information has been useful. However, please remember that only your doctor can advise you about what is best for you. Do not start, modify, or suspend treatment based on anything you have heard on this podcast. Please join us again soon.